Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing you another amazing guest for our listeners here. We are going to talk about how robocalls are catastrophic to your sales. That's literally right. They are catastrophic. In fact, they're costing you money, time, energy, adding stress to your life. But we just don't think about it because, it's just kind of something that comes through. But we're going to break it down on the numbers. We're going to show you how, you're probably losing hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars over a period of time just due to distractions and interruptions and lost time, as well as all the stress and aggravation that comes along with that. And certainly it's an easy fix, but we want to bring you this episode because, again, people are out there saying, hey, I want this type of episode. So, we're going to bring what you are looking for and hearing on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Alex is an expert in this field, a lot of interesting stuff. So I think you'll get a lot of great information and ideas out of this particular episode. So let's go talk to Alex right now. Alex, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm very grateful you're here today.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I love what we're going to be talking about today because it's one of my most aggravating things in the world. It's robocalls. And I want to talk, you and I had talked about how catastrophic robocalls have become now to the actual sales process. No matter what size company you are, you can be an enterprise size company, you can be a mom and pop shop, whatever it might be. But these robocalls, which drive me crazy, are really impeding the sales process to the point where it's actually causing people to lose sales. Why don't you explain?
Well, so what's happening is there's so many robocalls that people are simply not answering the phone anymore. And as you said, that's catastrophic. If you're trying to call somebody to complete a sale or get questions answered or overcome some objections they had, they're not going to pick up the phone. So how do you get a hold of them? And we all know that the phone and those real-time conversations are very effective as part of sales.
Well, human contact there's nothing that replaces it, So it's one thing to send an email, but I get spammed on email. Well, or not even spammed, right? It's legitimate email that's coming out, but there's so much email going on. What I do love about the pandemic, what's happened is it kind of cut down the amount of calls. So actually calls I actually look at more now than I ever have, right? So take me through all right, if we can't make calls, what do we do?
Well, I'm a little bit of an optimist that we can get to the point where people can make calls. So one of the key things is you need to understand if a number coming in, let's say you're going to answer the phone, you need to understand if that number is safe or not. So if there's a way that most of the unsafe calls get blocked and you've got a pretty good chance that a call coming in is real, then you'll answer it again. And so we actually think the key here is going to be technology, which is getting a couple things. So one is getting enforcement and everybody in the regulation area to do what they can to have fewer of these robocalls out there, right? So less of a chance it's a bad guy. But the sales guys need to run some sort of app or other technology on their phone that can filter out a lot of stuff for them. Because if the odds are 1 in 100, it's a bad guy, you're going to answer. If the odds are 1 in 2, it's a bad guy, you're not going to answer.
Right.
And so we think there's a technological plus enforcement solution that ultimately makes this better.
So I can relate to every salesperson out there who's been getting robocalls and they look at the number and they don't know what it is. The number's coming in. I've done this. When I was running corporate sales full time as a lifestyle, not a lifestyle job, but as my job to support my family, when calls came in, I had so many calls coming in. I had 62 incoming calls a day coming into my phone because I was just out there, creating a massive storm of activity. But when I didn't notice the number, I didn't pick it up. The few times, where you pick it up and it's like, this is Joe from blah, blah, blah. And, we noticed that you, whatever, might need a fence in your home or whatever. And it's one of those recorded things that are going on. We're here for your mortgage, or we're here for this, or, have you seen your doctor lately, or whatever the heck the thing is coming in. So I wouldn't answer it. But once in a while, it was actually a client who's like, hey, my order, I'm ready to go. So the challenge that I see is from a sales perspective, and we'll talk from an owner's perspective, but from a sales perspective, you miss that call that's timely. And if you're really busy, you kind of don't go back to your voicemail until maybe the end of the day or even the following day. And by then they may have already gone to the other people they're already talking with and already purchased.
So that's an excellent point. I mean, one of the things is we view the robocall problem in two ways. One is you're trying to get a hold of somebody. They're a lot less likely to pick up, right? Because there's so many robocalls. They don't know if your number is good. And there are techniques. Some people will text somebody ahead of time, say, hey, I'm going to call you from this number. It's so-and-so, and maybe they'll be more likely to answer the phone. But it's the other way too, which is they call you back. Right? You leave a voice, they go to all the trouble to call you back, and you look at the number and go, I don't recognize this number because they're calling from their home phone or a desk phone, or not the phone you called. And then you don't answer the call. And so it's this game of just failed phone tag going back and forth. And so you asked earlier, what do people do? Well, one thing we see people doing beyond just putting protection on their phone to try to filter out calls is they do often text people and say, hey, I'd like to call you. Can I make an appointment? They use Calendly. They actually make more appointments. So people are much more likely to go, oh, Doug's going to be calling at 10. I'm getting a call at 10. Let me pick up the phone.
Right. That's a really excellent point. Sending a text message ahead of time is wonderful because a lot of people, they will look at their text. And like you said, Calendly, and then you got an email reminder that's going out as well. So it's funny. I am getting now a call that the person is calling and they're saying, we're from the Federal Labor Board and we want to talk to you about your company. And these people are relentless. And so, you think, my gosh, I got to call the Federal Labor Board because they're the Federal Labor Board. Like, what's going on? Maybe my employees or whatever, right? So I get my CPA to call because I don't want to. And then I call because they're not answering my CPA. And it's the same message, like, hey, this is me from the Federal Labor Board, leave a message. And now when we leave a message saying something like, look, if you're going to leave a message with us, tell us what you're here for. Like, tell us, or we're not going to answer your call. It's got to that point. So with robocall blocking, if that was a number that, somebody was using to kind of go out there, basically that would eliminate that call completely, correct? In theory?
That's generally true, right? And in fact, I was when you said the labor board was calling you, my first thought was, well, that's a new imposter scam that's out there, right? Because they've been pretending to be the Social Security Administration, they're pretending to be the IRS, they're pretending to be Medicare, Medicaid, you name it, right? So my initial reaction would be, unless I got a letter from a government agency, I would assume it's not them when they call.
Right.
And my instant reaction would be kind of what you do, which is I wouldn't just answer the phone. I would go do some lookup of find a phone number and call them and say, hey, are you guys trying to get a hold of my business? Here's my information. Here's my email address, send something that way. And try to get it out of the phone call ban for that kind of discussion. It's the odds of it being an imposter are really high these days.
Yeah, and it's and those of you who are listening, well, let me give you a little plug here. So we're talking with Alex Quilici, and he owns a company called YouMail. So check it out at youmail.com. It's on blocking calls, robocalls. It's interesting because these robocalls used to start a lot with the elderly, right? They would just pound on the elderly people until they kind of made a call, and a lot of times they were scammers trying to scam out. Like my mother used to call me all the time, hey, this number here, because she knew I was in the telecommunications business. So she would call me, what do you think of this? And I'd be like, don't answer that call, Mom. That is not somebody, they're going to ask for your bank account numbers. And I remember one time she took the call and they did ask for her bank account, like, oh, hey, we're just trying to do this, right? But it's not filtered just consumer to consumer anymore, or targeting consumers. it's actually targeting businesses on top of that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's absolutely. It used to be just call everybody, right? It was completely untargeted, make as many calls as you can and see if somebody answers. Then they got smart and said, well, let's go after the elderly for this particular scam, or let's go after college students for this particular scam, like student loans. That's not calling people in their 60s and 70s. That's calling people in their 20s, 30s, and maybe 40s, right? So they got smarter and smarter about targeting. But then they started going after businesses. So one of the biggest scams that was going after businesses was, hey, we pre-approved you for a loan. Now, if you're a struggling business and someone says, oh, well, this is bank such and such, and all you got to do is give us a little bit of info and 250,000 will be set up, 3-year loan, all this stuff, it's really tempting. And so they saw a lot of success with those. And now they're even moving to more targeted scams. So they'll actually find out information about your business through breaches and other places, and then look like they're really legitimate when they're not. And so it's just been this kind of steady march to more and more what we call spear phishing, which is really targeted at individuals or small companies or whatever, with a scam that goes after them with information that makes people believe it's real.
It's just insane to think that humans think on this level, right? I mean, don't we have better things to do to help one another versus, do those type of things? All right. So I'm a business owner. I'm listening here. I got, 17 salespeople. And I'm thinking, okay, how does this kind of benefit me? I get it on the salesperson side, but on the business side itself, like, how do I protect myself against these calls coming in maybe? Or, to me, it would make sense. Look, let's get my 17 salespeople equipped with robocall technology, or blocking technology, if you will. From a business owner, how do I protect myself from the same? Is it the same process or a different process or thought process?
It's exactly the same process. I mean, think about it being a business owner. You not only don't want these scams to, come in and potentially cause a loss, you don't want to waste your time, right? So for a business owner, you're really busy. You want a time-saving mechanism that filters out the calls so that if you get a call that comes through and rings your phone, you can answer it because it might be a prospect. It might be a client. There's at least some chance it's a legitimate business thing that's worth your 2 minutes to answer the phone and start talking. And, owners get calls, probably more calls than sales guys sometimes, right? Like you mentioned, the labor board or tax people or the permit office or God knows what, right? So you have the same exact need as your sales guys. You do not want to be getting these calls in that are likely illegitimate and just wasting your time.
So I got a time waste on my side as a business owner, which is also a disruption because I might be going in different directions. It's not just the call itself. It's like, with this labor board thing, for example, I got my CPA involved. I got this involved. You're going to charge me. I already know that, but I didn't want to deal with the call, right? So I got expense going out. I've got time wasted chasing around something I don't even know is legitimate or not legitimate. And all of this kind of adds up to a big ball of stress. Really.
You're absolutely right. It's stress. And the other thing that we left out is just being interrupted. Like, owning a business, you find getting a chunk of time that you can just focus on something is generally pretty difficult. And now you get these calls coming in, you go answer the call. It's some crazy thing. You hang up. Now, where was I? Right. I'm trying to remember, was I send that email and all of a sudden stuff stays in drafts for 2 days, right? Because you just moved on to something else. So the interruption factor is huge.
So I used to, at one time, I was president of training and sales for a company called Chet Holmes International. So Chet wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And we used to measure this. And the interruption time, on average, takes about 15 minutes away from somebody. Like we used to call them got-a-minute meetings, right? Because somebody come into the office and go, hey, boss, got a minute? Hey, you got a minute, right? And so we would minimize these got-a-minute meetings in those companies because what we wanted to do is we wanted to improve the productivity, the effectiveness and the efficiency of their productivity. And so it was about 15 minutes on uptime and downtime, like just getting interrupted like that. So what I don't think a lot of people realize is if you got 6 robocalls a week and they interrupted you doing that, that's 90 minutes a week. So if we started taking that out, 90 minutes a week, we're losing an hour and a half every single week times 50. So that's 75 hours a year.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're losing a week and a half's productivity just due to robocalls at that point.
And you're being conservative because I think the average person's getting 20, 25 robocalls a month, right? So that's a lot of time that you're going to lose trying to decide what to do with these robocalls. It's really a huge time sink for folks.
So that's like 30 hours a month lost. Is that right? No, 25. Yeah. Because if you get into a week, well, whatever the numbers are, that's a huge amount of time. So if we now take that time and we divide it back into our revenue, like if we were losing, I don't know, a week and a half a year, and let's say we're $1 million company and that generates $25,000 a week. These robocalls are actually costing us $37,500 a year in lost productivity.
And that's a good way to look at it. And I'd also add that you never know what you were doing when you were interrupted, right? So you're working on a contract, you get interrupted by a robocall, you come back, you weren't sure what you were doing, you leave some clause out, and now the contract's not good for you, right?
Yeah.
It's the impact of being able to, you're working less productively, there's more risk that something's going to go wrong. You just forget about something. I mean, we're all human, right? You just forget what you were doing and do something else. You could lose a big deal. You lose $100,000 deal because somebody called you a couple of times in an hour when you were busy.
That's another lost opportunity process, which is real tangible money for many companies. Even $1 billion company doesn't want to lose $100,000 deal. I mean, it's that simple. And certainly, a $5 million company, that's significant, chunk of money coming through the door. And worse yet, that sale is going somewhere else. So if it goes to your competitor, versus us, then we make our competitor even stronger, and us a little bit less strong. So I don't like this. So thank you for bringing this forward. Talking with Alex Quilici from YouMail, and we're having a really great discussion here on robocalls. In a way, I don't think people even think about robocalls because, it's just kind of like, I don't know, you go camping, you expect mosquitoes, right? I mean, it's just one of those things, but when you have a mosquito-free environment, your camping is so much better. Or of those of you who would never go camping, glamping is the thing, right? Like my two daughters, they will not go camping; they will go glamping. But the reality is, you don't want pest around, and we don't want pest around interrupting our time, interrupting our sales process, interrupting the financial capacity or capabilities of what we're doing in business, all because we're getting interrupted through these ridiculous robocalls. Now I got to ask this question because why don't the telecommunications providers out there, why don't they just stop this? Like, I mean, what reason would they? I mean, would make sense to me. Their clientele is getting pissed off, right? Or as they would say in England, another name. But the reality is, why don't the carriers just like stop this whole mess?
And that's a great question. There's a couple of reasons. So one is it's extremely easy to set up a robocall operation. You can actually go to websites and just upload a set of phone numbers, upload some audio that you want to play, say where it should go if they press 1, where the call should go, and go make a million calls for, a few $100. And so when it's that cheap, it's like turning phone calls into banner ads for scammers. And so it's really easy for people to get started and cause tremendous amounts of havoc. That makes it a hard problem because it's whack-a-mole, but there's tons of moles out there who are causing these issues. And so the government will go after it. They'll go after one, they shut it down, and the guy's cousin sets up an operation, and then their other cousin, and it just keeps going. So it's so easy to do it. The other thing, though, is you are seeing enforcement start to happen. It used to be they'd enforce it, and there'd be a penalty, and nobody'd pay the penalty. The robocaller would plead poverty. They'd go away for a few years and then pop back. Now they're starting to go after the carriers that are letting these phone calls go on to the telephone network. So there's thousands of wholesale VoIP carriers that are mostly legitimate, but they wind up carrying bad traffic. There's some carriers that aren't legitimate. Enforcement's going after those to try to shut those down. And that probably will make more of a difference over time, right? Because instead of going after individuals, you're going after the carrier. You've got a choke point to try to stop all that traffic from getting on the network in the first place.
Oh, interesting. When it starts costing them money, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, we'll pay attention to this in a far greater way.
That's exactly right. If you're a wholesale carrier, you may have one of two problems. One is you're generally legitimate, but you don't have the resources or the tools to really look at your network and understand when someone's abusing it. Right. So those are good guys. They're just sort of in a bad situation. But you also have these guys that are just bad. Like 90, 95% of their traffic is junk. And they've decided to go make a living by getting junk calls into the telephone network. And I think that's who everybody's going to go after first, right? Is really go after those guys, try to shut down those operations. But some of us are old enough to remember when email was filled with spam. And it got to the point where like every other email was spam, right? And it took 5-10 years of hard work to where now maybe you get one a day or something. I think robocalls are going to be sort of similar. The problem is a robocall is much more annoying than a spam email, right? Because a robocall is ringing, it feels like it's important. Where spam email, it's just, click, delete, you move on.
Right. And then you get to filter them anyways if you want to. And it's not an emergency, like emergency interruption. You can look at it and go, and just bank it. You can't do that with a call. So 5 or 10 years. So if I'm losing $150,000 a year and it takes these wonderful government agencies, 10 years to do this, I've lost $1.5 million. That's basically what I'm hearing.
That's about right. The robocall thing is going to cause a lot of productivity and other loss for people for some time to come.
I don't want that. I don't think anybody would want that. What if that figures 5 times that, because certain companies, even my size company, I can lose $100,000 deal. If I lost one of those a year for the next 10 years, it's $1 million gone. And like you said, it's a lot higher probability than I even quoted. So I really appreciate that. Oh, I wanted to qualify whack-a-mole because, some people may not know what whack-a-mole is. Whack-a-mole is a game that you go to an arcade or a carnival or whatever, and these little moles pop up. And you take a nice soft hammer and you whack them on the head and you get a score, and that score adds up and everything's, but here's the difference between whack-a-mole there and whack-a-mole, what Alex, you were just talking about. Whack-a-mole at the carnival or the arcade, that's fun. But whack-a-mole here in business, that's not fun. It's creating more stress and more interruptions. And I read a statistic one time and I then tried to validate. I couldn't validate it much, but the average employee looks like it takes weeks for them to find lost stuff, right? And so that costs companies money. But when they hear that, they go, whoa, I pay attention to that in a big way. So let's tighten up our operations. When it comes to sales team members, a lot of times companies are like, I'll let them handle this, right? I'll just, they're smart enough to know how to navigate, or my margins are okay on this and I'm making money on my sales team. But, as everybody who's listener here, they know we're all about optimization, and that's part of a CEO sales strategies. If you can improve a bottom line by 1 or 2% on the profitability side, that's huge just through optimization for most companies. So what I'm really hearing is this is more of an optimization. Firstly, getting rid of the annoyance is just heaven. It's like not having a mosquito in tent at night, right? But the second thing is that it's really about optimization of the whole sales process. And this is one of the reasons that if people want to work more effectively on their sales and more efficiently, then eliminating these robocalls it's not even a consideration. It's a must when it comes down to it.
So I'd say that's absolutely right? They get in the way. But the other bigger thing I think that's going to happen over time is there's more and more of what we call spear phishing, which is where they do a target, right? So they can go after a sales guy pretending to be the CEO and have the sales guy do something like transfer money or do something they're not supposed to do. Ooh. And we're seeing more and more of these scams coming. And there's technology now where they can take samples of someone's voice and essentially create a full-blown voice. So it sounds like your CEO calling, right? I really need that $100,000 transfer this account, so we can close this big project. And we're seeing that at the enterprise side for sure now. It's all over the place. In fact, there's somebody who transferred $2.5 million because of their CEO asking something, right? It was that good. But you're going to start seeing that on the smaller companies, right? Like all sorts of stuff happen there where your business is at risk, right? You don't need hundreds of these calls coming in. You just need the one that someone picks up and they fool them. So it's a security issue as well as just sort of opportunity loss, interference, productivity issue. Ultimately, robocalls will go less and less and less, but the ones that remain will be worse and worse and worse. It's talked about targeting, right? When they were just calling everybody, it's different than calling everybody over 65, which is different than calling everybody over 65 with Alzheimer's or whatever targeted thing you want to get to. And we're going to see that with businesses too.
So the liability then becomes on the CEO or the business owner who's actually voices being imprinted, because I suspect that insurance is not going to step up on this one.
I think it's going to be some very interesting case law over the next few years. More and more of these little scams start happening.
Oh my gosh. So, and that could also be really bad for PR. Like, I mean, if a company starts to do certain things and transfer money to organizations, per se, that are unscrupulous and questionable public safety, then that could really be a bad reputation for a company and its owners.
Well, we see that with the banking industry, right? There's so many people pretending to be banks and calling people and scamming them that people think the bank's responsible for it. They blame the bank, even though it wasn't the bank making the call. It's like, well, why didn't you do stuff to prevent the harm from these calls? And you're right. You're spot on that that's the big issue. Is it's your personal brand, your company brand, the enterprise brand. They're all under attack from these imposters and the damage they're doing.
Oh, thank you for bringing this forward, Alex. Here's the crazy part. I didn't have robocall before blocking. I didn't. And in this conversation is like, I'm just going to go to your website right now and I'm going to sign up for robocall block. Firstly, I knew I've had to have it because it's been more of an annoyance. And I do a ton online, so I don't have a lot of phone calls comparatively to certain businesses, but the ones that do come in are annoying as heck, right? At this point. And they do interrupt my day, just like we were talking about. How do people, like, they want to stop this? Can they just go to your website and sign up? I mean, is there a trial period? What do we got going on?
So we have a robocall blocking app. We have a couple different versions. One's free. If they just want to get started, it blocks. They just go download our app and it'll start blocking this, like what we call the known spammer list, like the million worst numbers out there. For people who want to never get another robocall guaranteed, we have a premium offering. So they can look at our premium offerings and see which one fits. But we actually play CAPTCHAs to numbers we don't recognize. And so a CAPTCHAs, we got to press *12 or whatever random number. And so nobody can get through unless they're a human, which is great, right? And people are very used to CAPTCHAs in the web world. And we launched that and we found it just blocks everything. It's really amazing. And I think for people who are serious about business, that's the tool they'll want.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if I should put you on the spot or not, but can my listeners get maybe some type of discount or promo code?
Sure. They can go to YouMail.com/CEO sales. We did it all lowercase, CEO SALES. And they can get a 25% discount on the premium offerings. And not only that, a 14-day guarantee. If they don't like it, money back, no questions asked.
That was much better than I thought you were going to say. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure my listeners will appreciate it too. So, Alex, was there any question that maybe you would like? I hope Doug asked me this question and I didn't.
I think, one of the question would be, how optimistic am I that this problem ultimately goes away? And I think it ultimately will go away, but just like other things like email, it's going to be really important to have a mix of consumers protecting themselves, right? Consumers ran antivirus on their own. They learned not to click links in emails. Consumers are going to have to do their part, but I think enforcement is going to help a lot here. The regulators, the enforcement, they're going after the bad guys. So it'll get better, but it's going to take some time.
Well said. Well, we're speaking with Alex Quilici, and he owns a company called YouMail. Go to YouMail.com. And since I didn't know what the promo code was, Alex, you made it. So thank you. So what is it again for the 25% discount?
Sure. It's YouMail.com/CEO sales, all lowercase. If you go to that link, you'll get the discount code automatically.
Awesome. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody as well. Alex, I really appreciate you being here. I'd love to have you come back on another call if that's something you'd like to do, just and let me know. So again, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast and bringing great information to our listeners.
Thank you for having me.
You may not have realized how much aggravation, time, and money losing sales actually from a simple thing like a robocall. Never mind the potential of lost reputation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that you're losing money. And these robocalls are disruptive to life. As we were saying on the show, the average interruption is 15 minutes of downtime lost on a productivity. But it's also, it could really just throw your numbers off on being able to not focus, and you kind of forget about something in a proposal. You forget about something that you were talking about. It's just being interrupted all throughout the day. And if you're getting an average of 25 to 30 of these calls a month, that is insane, right? I mean, that's just, if you add up the numbers at 15 minutes per interruption, if you had 30 of these a month, I mean, 15 times 30, it's 450 minutes a month that you're losing. Divide that back by 60. Not going to do that in my head, but I know it's somewhere around 7 to 8 hours a month that you're losing just to these ridiculous calls coming in. Anyways, so what do you do about it? Well, go check it out at youmail.com. Test it out, see if it works for yourself. And if it does, great. You eliminate that. If you have a company and you have a bunch of sales team members, get them to get it, or pay for it out of what the margin should be. If it improves your sales and you get 1 or 2 sales a year, it more than pays for itself, and it keeps you people focused. As usual on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, if you have a subject matter that you want to have happen, bring it to us. We'll find the guest, just like we did with Alex. Or if you feel, hey, you're an expert in some subject matter that will improve somebody's sales in the capacity of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, helping getting people to the top 1%, then bring that on. We'll be happy to talk with you about it. Send an email to us at youmatter, youmatter, at ceosalesstrategies.com. We'll be happy to have the conversation, figure out if this makes sense for you and for our listeners. And if you want to help yourself, help others in your company or your total company get to the top 1% of sellers worldwide, globally in your industry, reach out to us, or just reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. And again, if you love this episode and you love episodes and you like listening to this and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. The better the numbers are on the subscription, the higher our algorithms go up. Certainly makes a difference in our life. And please take time to write a review. I know it takes a few moments. Really grateful to do so. Once again, this is Doug C. Brown with another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Go out, sell stuff, sell a lot of it, sell it ethically, make a lot of money, help your clients, live happy, and help them live a better life through what you do. Until next time, we'll see you, and to your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.